I knew something was off the second I saw my name misspelled on the meeting invite. Mandatory check-in, ops strategy. No subject, no context, just Skylar's name at the bottom, signed with that smug little MBA flourish like she'd earned something more than a daddy-nudged LinkedIn endorsement. I walked in and she didn't even look up, just kept tapping at her phone like I was late to a dental cleaning instead of 20 years into holding this place together with paper clips, duct tape, and a decade of institutional memory no one else bothered to learn. She gestured to the chair like I was a dog. I didn't sit. "You've been here forever," she started, like it was a crime. "But I only keep valuable staff." No emotion, no eye contact, no understanding of what those words actually meant. Like the software suite she was still logging into wasn't architected in a spiderweb of nested keys I designed after her father approved the overhaul in '09. Like the vendor logins didn't still point to my encrypted vault. Like the compliance credentials tied to federal contracts didn't still bear my name and single signature clearance. She didn't ask what I did. She assumed she knew. Skylar didn't fire an employee. She amputated a nervous system, so I just nodded. No protest, no lecture. I reached into my bag, handed over my badge, and slid my exit checklist across the table. Her eyes flicked over it like she expected me to argue or beg. But I'd already cleared out my desk that morning. Call it intuition. Call it a hunch. Call it watching the daughter of your supervisor, who's been out on medical leave less than a week, strut around the office like she invented Lean Six Sigma. "Good luck," I said. And I meant it in the way people say it before watching a blindfolded idiot juggle knives on a unicycle. Then I turned and walked out. By the way, before we get deeper into this, quick thing. If this kind of story speaks to your soul or your inbox, take a second to hit subscribe and like. 97% of y'all listen without subscribing, but it really motivates the team and keeps the stories rolling. Alright, back to the disaster. I didn't say goodbye to anyone, not because I was bitter, but because I knew it wouldn't be goodbye for long. I passed Jerry in logistics. He gave me that look, the one that says, "You okay?" without saying a word. I gave him a nod that said, "Watch." Skylar was still in her glass box when I exited, probably already dreaming up her next reorg spreadsheet like she was painting by numbers with people's jobs. She had no idea that the doc she just deleted from the shared drive, Options workflow, wasn't the real workflow, that the actual architecture was living inside a partition system that triggered a legal handoff the second I submitted my exit form. Clause 4D. Dean, the real CEO, her dad, had it buried in my contract years ago when we rebuilt the operations strategy from the ground up. If I ever left involuntarily, access to key compliance systems, licenses, and supplier chains defaulted to null unless reassigned by me. Not legal, not IT, not even Dean himself without my acknowledgement. And Skylar? She hadn't even bothered to check the paperwork. Because I was just old blood. Outside, the fall air hit sharp. I sat in my truck for a while, watched the building from the lot like a ghost watching his own funeral. It looked the same. Brick, glass, fake landscaping out front. But I knew the cracks had already started forming. The thing about operations is it only looks boring when it's working. When it stops working, that's when people realize how much was being done by someone who never made noise about it. So I waited for the silence to echo, waited for the clock to tick past the deadlines I used to chase, waited for the first missed delivery, the first vendor flag, the first system access denial. I didn't lift a finger, didn't send a message, didn't even shut the door behind me, because when they told me I was no longer valuable, they didn't realize I was the valuation. Skylar hit the ground running like a toddler in stilettos, loud, wobbly, and absolutely convinced she was killing it. Monday afternoon, she blasted out an all-staff email titled Week 1, Day 1, Efficiency Starts Now. Fonts in 4 colors. Corporate buzzwords stacked like a word salad on meth. She even signed it interim CEO, acting lead strategist. Real LinkedIn warrior energy. I forwarded it to myself just for the laugh. Tuesday came with her first Leadership Vision town hall. Remote logins failed for 6 people. The projector froze halfway through her Canva masterpiece. IT whispered later that the platform she used didn't even meet internal compliance. But she beamed through it all like a TED Talk, got drunk, and forgot what industry it was in. She called herself a systems modernizer and promised a more agile vendor ecosystem. She said the word synergy 8 times. No one laughed. No one clapped either. Outwardly, everything still looked functional. But inside, the gears had started grinding. A shipment didn't show up to our St. Louis partner plant. Just late, they said. Probably nothing. A procurement rep flagged a login issue with the supply chain platform, said her access was pending reset. Odd, since I'd been the credential sponsor. Someone noticed a vendor account was frozen, but blamed it on a routine audit. The CFO's admin messaged Skylar asking about a scheduled API license renewal. She replied with a smiley face and said, "Forward it to DevOps. I'm delegating." Except DevOps didn't know what the hell that license was for. I did, and I was gone. And still no alarm bells. That's the thing with systems held together by habit and history. They don't crash immediately. They stall. They shudder. They hiccup like a body suddenly missing oxygen. I didn't say a word. Didn't text anyone. I watched it all quietly from my front porch, coffee in hand, the dog at my feet. Read the whispers as they leaked onto Slack. Saw my name pop up inside conversations. Wait, didn't she used to handle that? Did anyone tell her how the vendor compliance tracker actually updates? Is Skylar even aware that renewal protocols were hard-coded? She wasn't, and no one wanted to be the one to tell her. Wednesday morning, 7:12 a.m., I sent one email. 5 words. No flair. Just, "Please initiate termination clause 4D. Legal wouldn't make a fuss, they'd seen it before. I'd worked with them for years on contingency structures, automation guardrails, and failover protocols. Clause 4D wasn't some revenge script. It was an agreement, a protection, a trigger if my role ended without transitional documentation. It didn't break anything, just disabled access to several nested credentials, nullified my digital signature on 3 federal supply chain contracts, froze secondary login fallback to my encrypted vault. It would look to someone untrained like a software hiccup. To the trained eye, it was the company holding its breath. And Skylar, in all her boardroom Barbie glory, had no idea she just fired the air traffic controller mid-takeoff. By noon, someone tried to ping my corporate email. Auto response. This address is no longer monitored. Please contact legal for continuity support. Cold, clean, silent. That evening, Jerry, bless him, texted me. Just one line. She's asking where the Q4 audit tools are. I didn't reply. I just sat back, took a sip, and watched as the ghost she made of me started haunting her systems. BY Thursday morning, Skylar had decided she was bored with anything that didn't involve her name on a slide deck. She canceled the standing ops call I'd hosted every week for 15 years, the one that kept logistics, procurement, legal, and compliance in a tight, predictable loop. Called it legacy noise. Told the admin team we needed clean lines of communication with fewer voices. Dead weight, she said again. That phrase was starting to be her catchphrase. I half expected her to stencil it above her faux marble desk next to the succulent she hadn't watered once. She started ghosting vendor emails like a freshman avoiding group project work. Procurement flagged an issue with Carlisle Freight. No response for a shipment status request. Skylar waved it off. They always delay. I've got this. Except no, Carlisle didn't always delay. That shipment was part of a quarterly contract compliance guarantee. The kind with financial penalties. And I was the one who usually called Kevin from Carlisle directly and ironed things out before they escalated. She didn't even know Kevin existed. Probably thought logistics ran on vibes and bullet points. Then it started compounding. One of our longtime clients, the aerospace group, called the account manager asking why no one had confirmed the quarterly performance metrics. That deadline had passed 12 hours ago. Silence on our end. The client's tone wasn't angry, just confused. But confusion turns to concern real fast in our line of work. And concern? That's how you lose multi-year defense-adjacent contracts. Still, Skylar held court in the C-suite like it was her college sorority mixer. Rolled her eyes at team leads who raised flags. Told the VP of quality to trust the new process. And reminded him that Dad left me in charge for a reason. That last part made someone audibly cough in the hallway. Probably Amanda from finance. Amanda always had good timing. Then Friday morning, HR got a letter. Certified. Overnight. Marked urgent. It was from the Office of Defense Subcontractor Compliance. Not a regular letter. Not a formality. A real warning. One of the contracts I used to manage, tied to a sensitive data transport protocol, had pinged their systems with a primary contact unreachable flag. My name was still listed as the compliance liaison. And since no transition documentation had been submitted, they had to follow federal reporting requirements. That meant a formal notification to corporate. That meant HR had to forward it. Skylar read it, scoffed, and tossed it on her desk like it was a Groupon ad. "We'll update the contact Monday," she told the HR rep, not realizing that not responding in 72 hours triggered a review of our standing eligibility. She didn't read the rules. She assumed power meant immunity. Someone else might have warned her. I didn't. I was halfway through a bowl of cereal, watching the morning news, when I got a screenshot of the letter from someone in HR. No comment, just the image. Skylar's signature was at the bottom of the forwarded message. All is under control. Best S. Control. That was rich, because by that point, cracks had started showing in places she hadn't even looked. The BI dashboard she loved bragging about, data feeds were delayed, ETL scripts I'd written were paused. The vendor CRM, renewal credentials locked behind my archived key. Nobody noticed yet, but they would. The pretty dashboards would keep refreshing with last week's numbers until someone tried to drill down. And then, blank, dead air. The systems weren't crashing. They were withdrawing. And Skylar, still riding her little high, had no clue she was tap dancing on a fault line. The company hadn't exploded, but it had started whispering a question no one wanted to say out loud yet. Who the hell let her drive? Skylar was halfway through prepping her second town hall. This one titled, From Legacy to Leadership, Streamlining the Supply Chain, when the first real, "What the hell is this?" alert came through. 2 expired license keys. Minor ones in her eyes. Internal platforms, OpsSync and LedgerTrace. Not sexy. Not investor-facing. Just the boring backbone tools our operations team used daily to track intervendor delivery protocols and financial reconciliation flags. You know, the stuff that keeps the company not in federal arbitration. IT flagged the expirations like they always did. Auto alerts tripped. Renewal scripts didn't fire. That was odd, those had always been seamless. Then the team lead noticed the renewal prompts were coded to ping my vault credentials. Specifically, a logic chain that required my private key signature. You don't override that kind of thing with a quick password reset. It's not an Outlook calendar. Skylar's response? A half laugh, half yawn. Can't we just reassign admin privileges? The silence in the room probably could have shattered bone. IT tried to explain the trust chain was hard-coded. It wasn't about admin rights, it was about provenance. The renewal contracts were tied to authorized chain of custody conditions. You don't just copy-paste your way out of that. Talk to DevSEC, she said with a wave, like she was ordering someone to refill her mimosa. This is ridiculous. It wasn't just ridiculous, it was unraveling. Quietly, underneath her slideshow of modernization initiatives and rebranded workflow charts. Compliance pinged her a few hours later. Different issue. One of the vendors, mid-tier, government-adjacent, nothing flashy, had gone dark. Not maliciously, just unresponsive. Their rep had emailed back, politely stating, "As per the terms of our standing agreement, we cannot proceed without validation from narrator's name. Until proper transition documentation is received, we are obligated to pause data exchange." Skylar forwarded it with 3 words. "Who is this?" That's when people started to whisper again. This time, louder. While she was playing whack-a-mole with the systems I'd kept humming for over a decade, I was sitting across from an old friend, Paul Evans, former supplier, occasional bourbon buddy, and the guy who once got our freight rerouted through a hurricane zone and still hit the delivery window by 48 seconds. He owed me a few favors. I'd never called one in. Until now. We met in the corner booth of a half-dead coffee shop off Route 5. Just two middle-aged folks talking about retirement plans and the art of slow exits. I slid a flash drive across the table. It wasn't a weapon. It was a key. On it, a diagnostic utility I'd written during COVID, when we were juggling remote vendor compliance and no one else wanted to touch the back-end systems. It didn't breach anything. It didn't erase. It just monitored. Dependencies, API syncs, latency drift, uptime logs, renewal timers. Passive but powerful. Paul looked at it, then at me. "You walking away?" he asked. I sipped my coffee. "Already did." He nodded, slipped the drive into his pocket, and changed the subject to fishing. That's the kind of friend Paul is. Doesn't ask why the car's on fire. Just brings a bucket. Back at headquarters, Skylar had begun issuing ultimatums. Her team said vendor cooperation was getting sluggish. She blamed resistance to change. She had no idea those vendors weren't rebelling. They were following rules. Rules she never bothered to learn. And me? I wasn't angry. I wasn't hacking. I wasn't sabotaging. I just stopped protecting them. Because for 20 years, my job wasn't to own the system. It was to keep it breathing. Quietly. Invisibly. And the moment Skylar decided I was obsolete, I let it exhale. By Thursday morning, the storm was finally audible. Not a hurricane yet, but the kind of low, teeth-rattling hum you hear before a tornado tears through your cornfield and leaves your porch swing hanging from a power line 5 counties over. And the best part? Skylar still thought it was just wind. First came the email from Dynacore, one of our high-value legacy clients, longtime partners in aerospace logistics. Real old-school guys. The kind who prefer handshakes over PDFs and who don't like their shipment dashboards blinking red during a live contract review. Their integration rep emailed, flagging shipment latency and invoice discrepancies. Interface showing blank reconciliation logs. Translation: where the hell are your numbers, and why does our portal look like a ghost town? 2 hours later, a defense-tier client sent in a formal concern. Their subcontractor performance dashboard wouldn't sync. They weren't accusing us yet, but the phrase contractual risk exposure was used. Once, bolded. That's a bullet through the hull in compliance speak. And then came the board chair. He didn't yell, didn't threaten. He just sent one surgical email to Skylar's inbox, CC'd to the full exec team. Subject line: continuity plan? Body: please confirm existence and location of updated operational continuity plan. Include transition documentation for mission-critical systems and vendor contact logs. Timeline EOD. That wasn't a question. That was a pistol placed gently on the table. Skylar, now visibly sweating through her silk blouse and losing her voice from too many peppy all-hands pep talks, tried calling her father. Twice. Straight to voicemail. Word was he was still recovering, out of state, and under doctor's orders to avoid stress. That ship had sailed, sunk, and was being looted by sea pirates. Her assistant started panicking. Told IT to pull all operational transition documents and legacy protocols. Except there were no transition documents. Because she never requested any. Because, in her words, he's just ops. The system runs itself. Spoiler, it doesn't. Meanwhile, I was at home, standing barefoot on the back porch with a mug of black coffee and the dog at my heel, reading a message from one of my old assistants. She'd been loyal, quiet, smart, always saw what others didn't. Text read: it's getting bad. She's blaming legacy systems now. I chuckled. Not a laugh, really. More of a satisfied exhale. Like the sound you make when you find out the raccoon in your attic finally fell through your neighbor's ceiling instead. Legacy systems. That's what she called the custom-built, vendor-synced, audit-tested framework that carried their multi-million-dollar contracts across federal, defense, and private sectors like a whisper. The system I built not because anyone told me to, but because no one else knew how. She blamed the thing that had protected them from a dozen regulatory headaches because she didn't understand how deeply it reached. That wasn't just ignorance. That was willful negligence dressed up in a LinkedIn pantsuit. But I didn't gloat. I didn't screenshot anything. Didn't stir the pot. I just opened my laptop, checked the server heartbeat logs, external mirrors I'd set up during the pandemic to test vendor latency. Nothing malicious, just quiet oversight. All legal, all mine. One vendor had stopped syncing at 8:46 a.m. Another flagged a timeout loop at 9:13. The foundation wasn't crumbling. It was folding in on itself. And in the eye of the storm, Skylar stood alone with her canvas slides, her disconnected access cards, and her misplaced confidence. The girl who thought streamlining meant firing the only person who knew how to reset the valves. And me? I just took another sip, whistled for the dog, and let gravity do its work. Friday didn't start with thunder. It started with silence. The kind of silence you don't notice until it stretches too long. Like a missing heartbeat in a crowded room. Skylar was mid-sentence, presenting a live demo to a cluster of investors who'd flown in from Chicago and DC. She was halfway through bragging about our streamlined vendor matrix when the screen froze, just blinked out, mid-animation, mid-fake smile. Then came the first ping from the procurement team. System non-responsive. Cannot load requisition interface. Then another, access denied. Procurement environment is offline. And then chaos. The entire back-end pipeline, the part nobody ever sees unless it's on fire, just stopped. Not exploded. Not corrupted. Just unreachable. Like someone had removed the floor from beneath a building and asked everyone to keep walking. The demo room went dead quiet. Skylar blinked, clicked, tapped the keyboard like she could will it back. Tried switching slides, nothing. She turned to the tech lead and hissed, "Fix it." He looked at her like she'd just asked him to rewire a satellite with a rubber band. At 10:03 a.m., a high-tier contract auto-triggered a penalty clause. Missed delivery sync. No override. Legal called, "Why wasn't this flagged?" Compliance called, "Did anyone check the audit logs?" Skylar tried emailing our 3 core vendors to reset access. No one responded. By 11:30 a.m., she'd locked herself in the glass conference room, hammering out messages to legal, IT, vendor liaisons, anyone who might throw her a rope. She even tried forwarding my old credentials, screenshotting expired keys, begging for manual overrides. At 12:14 p.m., one vendor finally replied. Subject line, authorization denied. Body, per contract stipulations, changes to system access or API sync permissions must be authorized by narrator's full name, designated primary liaison. No override allowed without signed transition agreement or formal revocation by said party. She stared at the screen like it had slapped her. No one had told her, but they didn't need to. She'd fired the one person who could have explained the failsafes, and then deleted the instruction manual. That's when the building doors slammed open. Dean had returned, early, against doctor's orders, and judging by the red splotches on his face and the way his eyes scanned the office like a hawk mid-dive, someone had finally gotten through to him. He walked past reception, ignored the greetings, and made a beeline for the conference room. Ty Askew, voice already rising. He didn't knock. "Where is she?" Skylar opened the door, pale as drywall, still holding her phone. Dean took one look at the dashboard outage on the screen and spat the words like acid. "You let who go?" She tried to speak, but he kept going. "You fired the only person who knew how this place actually runs? Without a handoff? Without documentation? Without a single transition file?" Skylar opened her mouth again. "Dad, he was—" "Don't," he snapped, voice cold now. "Don't you dare say, dead weight." The entire ops floor was silent. Phones still ringing. Emails still bouncing. Procurement frozen. Investors quietly slipping out the side doors, shaking their heads. I wasn't there, but I didn't have to be, because across town, my phone buzzed with a single line from a former teammate. "He's back." He's screaming. I leaned back in my chair, sipping lukewarm coffee, and watched the system logs tick down. Vendor syncs idle. Compliance flags unresolved. Contract triggers waiting. I hadn't broken anything. I just stopped holding it together. The emergency board meeting was called for 4 p.m. sharp. Not on Zoom. Not as a call. In person. That alone told you things were bad. You don't drag 12 suited egos out of their corner offices and club memberships on a Friday unless the building's on fire, or in this case, smoldering under the weight of one intern-in-chief's crusade against legacy systems. They gathered in the conference room, the real one, the one with frosted glass walls and bottled water no one ever drinks. Dean walked in last. No tie. Jacket wrinkled. The look of a man who hadn't slept and had just learned his daughter drove the company bus off a cliff, then blamed the brakes she never learned to use. Skylar sat at the end of the table, laptop open, face like porcelain stretched over a panic attack. She tried to start with a prepared deck, something about modernization metrics and streamlining initiatives, but Dean cut her off with one sentence. You fired the one man who knew how everything worked? No yelling this time, just surgical disappointment, louder than shouting, more final. Skylar swallowed. Tried to spin it. He was outdated, redundant. The systems needed modern oversight. Dean held up one hand. Stop. She didn't. He was resisting automation, she blurted. The workflows were opaque, the documentation sparse. We had to pivot towards scalable integration. Dean's palm hit the table. Not hard, just enough to make 3 directors flinch. You're talking like a PowerPoint deck, he said. Do you even understand what he built? She opened her mouth again, but nothing came out, because by then they all knew. The emails, the vendor refusals, the system collapses. It wasn't sabotage. It wasn't legacy sabotage. It was absence. The quiet vacuum left when you remove the one person keeping 1,000 spinning plates from crashing. Dean turned to the legal counsel, voice like gravel. Was there a continuity plan filed? None, she said. No exit interview. No credential reassignment. No system handoff. Clause 4D was triggered. Clause 4D, he repeated, like it was a ghost he'd forgotten lived in the walls. At the far end of the table, the CFO, who had barely spoken since Monday, finally piped up. Can we bring him back? No one answered, because while they were sitting there, still debating optics and blame, I was already receiving emails. 3, then 7, then 15. Subject lines like, just a quick chat? Can we connect? Are you available to consult on vendor sync restoration? From directors, VPs, even Skylar's hand-picked transformation consultant. They didn't sound smug anymore, just tired, panicked, and very, very polite. I didn't reply. Not yet. I was in no rush, because leverage doesn't always come with noise. Sometimes it shows up as silence in an inbox that used to take you for granted. Sometimes it's just being gone. And Dean? Dean sat there, shoulders sagging, staring at a wall he used to command, realizing the worst part. I hadn't just known the systems. I was the systems. And now, they were talking to me. Not him. Not her. Just me. By the following Wednesday, the unraveling wasn't quiet anymore. It had shape, weight, velocity. Headlines were circling. Not splashy ones. Yet, but the kind that start in industry newsletters with phrases like compliance lapse, vendor instability, and the ever-deadly internal restructuring. Translation: the vultures had noticed something dying on the ground. 3 major vendor contracts expired in a single afternoon. Not out of malice, just protocol. With no authorized liaison and no executed transitions, their systems defaulted to termination. One of them even sent flowers to corporate. No joke. A card attached read, "Thank you for 12 years of partnership. We're proud of what we built together." That one made it onto Slack. The memes followed. Most were deleted by Skylar's assistant within the hour, but not before half the company screenshotted them. The worst hit came late Thursday. The Department of Defense subcontract, the crown jewel of our compliance portfolio, was officially flagged non-compliant. No secondary contact. No current credentialed system operator. Clause 42B kicked in. Automatic audit. Immediate pause on procurement clearance. The legal team went full DEFCON 2. Emails flew like shrapnel. HR tried to schedule emergency remediation training, only to realize no one left had access to the systems they were supposed to fix. They'd fired the map and then wondered why they couldn't find the exit. PR tried to spin it. Strategic pivot. Leadership evolution. Operational realignment. But the clients weren't buying it. Especially not Sentinel Aero. They'd been with us since the Bush administration. Big contract. Recurring. Clean. And now? Gone. Their email was short. Surgical. Due to recent instability and vendor-side compliance risk, we will not be renewing our contract at this time. Thank you for your past service. That one hit hard. Dean didn't fight the next board vote. There wasn't one, technically. Just a quiet suggestion from 3 directors over a closed-door lunch. Step down with dignity, or face public questions you can't answer. He resigned Friday morning. No farewell email. No statement. Just disappeared from the internal directory sometime before lunch. Skylar? Corporate limbo. Stripped of title, reassigned to strategic initiatives, which is HR's way of saying, please don't touch anything important while legal figures out if you cost us federal contracts. She stopped coming in. Her office went dark. Word is she tried reaching out to one of the vendors directly. Got an automated reply. This contact no longer holds authorization. Ironic. That afternoon, my phone rang. Not a number I recognized, but I picked up anyway. Old habits. Is this my name? Yes. This is Lauren Vega from Sentinel Aero. We've been following the situation. I waited. We'd prefer to work with you directly moving forward. As an independent consultant, you know the systems. You built the integration. You know where the gaps are and how to fix them. It wasn't flattery. It was necessity. I didn't gloat, didn't even smile. Just asked her to send the paperwork. She did within the hour, while the building I'd quietly propped up for 2 decades crumbled under its own arrogance. I sat at my kitchen table, contract in hand, watching the sun crawl across the window blinds. This wasn't revenge. This was gravity. ChatGPT skazal. Monday morning. No alarms. No tension. Just the low hum of a second-hand HVAC system and the sound of my boots on real hardwood floors. None of that faux marble corporate laminate. This place didn't pretend to be more than it was. A small office tucked behind a freight distributor in a forgotten tech park off Route 9. Quiet. Efficient. Ours. I opened the door to my new space. Glass walls, soft light, clean desk. No assistant. No welcome balloon. Just a ceramic mug already full of pens and a stack of folders waiting like old friends. On top, 2 contracts. Signed. One from Sentinel Aero. The other from an old logistics partner who once swore they'd never work outside the vendor ecosystem. They both found me anyway. The consultancy's only been up a few weeks, but we're already profitable. I'm not the boss, not technically. We built it flat. Everyone's a partner. No one gets fired because someone's daughter read a Forbes article about disruption. I poured a fresh cup of coffee, black, strong, no cream, and sat down like I'd never left. 'Cause really, I hadn't. I just stopped letting someone else wear my name like it was overhead. My laptop pinged. One new message. From Dean Weston. Subject: please call me. Just want to talk. I stared at it for a moment. No anger. No adrenaline. Just a stillness. Dean wasn't a villain. He was just a man who forgot that silence isn't absence. It's protection. And once that silence leaves, you start hearing every crack you used to ignore. I clicked archive. Didn't even open it. Outside, the sun was already warming the windows. Our junior partner, Malik, bright kid, was walking in, mid-call with a new federal client we'd never had access to before. He nodded at me. I nodded back. Nothing needed to be said. I took a sip, leaned back, and exhaled slow. They called me expendable. Then they realized I wasn't the cost. I was the coverage. And when they fired me, they didn't just cut payroll. They let go of the firewall, the oxygen, the spine. But me, I didn't torch the place. I just left it open to the wind. And sometimes, the wind's enough.